Okay, so now what we want to work on is the actual lamp object. We have a reference where I actually built the maps from. I have a simpler object and a simple map system. So here's the actual object, and what we have is a box that has some geometry up top, has geometry at the bottom, and then it has these aspects, which are the chains. And the chains are just planar objects that are intersecting each other at perpendicular angles. Why are we doing that? Because that's a lot easier to make and render than as opposed to chain links. And we're going to use opacity maps to actually get the job done to fake the chain links. So we're going to use a combination of maps and good UV unwrapping to make this object come to life. Let's build them a shader first. Again, we're talking about standard shaders. And I got a whole slew of maps. And as usual, I like to actually have a Windows Explorer browser open to where my textures are, so I can quickly drag and drop. So I got my diffuse, I've got my illumination, and I got my opacity. And that's all we need. Drag and drop, throw it over here. Alright, so to assemble this real quick, what I'm going to use, this is for color. What we need to do is, this is a hanging light. And most objects do not actually emit light unless you're using some kind of special rendering technology like mental ray. We are talking about game development, not a lot of actual power like mental ray offers. So we need to fake it. I'm going to right click, I'm going to call this a cylinder so we can see it set up the way we need to. This is going to go into the self-illumination. And you'll notice that the yellow areas brighten up very quickly. And we can use the animation tools to turn that down if we want to have any kind of transition or varied amounts. Leave it as 100% and that's fine. What we need to do now is we need to actually access the chains. And the chains are actually in the diffuse map. There they are right there. You know, remember the chains that I have in my object are quite substantial. So we need to rely on the tiling technology that comes with UV mapping and unwrapping in the actual 3D technology or the 3D software. So let's go ahead and get that going. So put that into the opacity. And if we look at the opacity map, you'll see that the chain is white and the area around the chain is black. The black's going to be the cutout, the white's going to be what's rendered. Similar to what's happening with the self-illumination. Wherever it's white, it's going to show highlights. It's going to show like it's illuminated. And I have a little bit coming off of the metal here to give it a sense of it actually creating light around the object, kind of give it a halo effect of sorts. And that kind of just helps sell the object. Now look how my map has changed. See how the actual area has been cut out. So let's go ahead and we can apply this to our lamp. The lamp should have no mapping on it. We haven't done any mapping on it. And if it does, we'll fix it anyway. So apply it. So it has no mapping because the actual image is not showing up. It's just kind of did a hue change. So we're done with the material editor. We got our shader. It's applied to our object. We know it's an instance because it's in bold and our make unique button is active. Let's go to unwrap. Oh, we're done. It's perfect. Go to the open editor. Okay, so this is what we're seeing. You can see this is this stretching, which means that the map geometry is not lined up the way it needs to be. So with knowing what the object looks like and what the map looks like, I can go forward, but I want to try to do this so you guys can see it as well. First off, I need to hide the checkerboard because it'll make me vomit and I'll get real seasick. Second, I'm going to select all my faces and I'm just going to flatten the mapping. And remember the way it's set up by default at 45 degrees on the polygonal angle, it's going to slap everything to fit uniformly onto here, which means that the chains fit in here. Remember the chain, I go up here, I go to the HangingLight diffuse, turn it on, the chain's this, and that's the actual chain itself. So what I need to do is I want to scale all the chain link pieces together so that I make sure that they actually all stay the same size when they're rendered out. So the links, when they're presented on the geometry, have the same scale and proportion as they do. So what I the best solution to do is to go ahead and select these faces.
Okay, so now what we're going to work on is the second step of our...
Okay. So what I'm going to do is select these pieces of geometry, slide them out of the way because I don't need them right now. They're going to represent the actual faces across the lamp right here. What I want to work on is I'm going to take these pieces and I'm going to scale them up to where at least the height in this direction, up and down, matches this chain. And these fastest way is to just scale them up, and I can just put these things in here and just keep tweaking. Now, I'm going to hide this again. I want to make this even easier for myself. As you can tell, we've got some tedious work ahead of us. The best thing to do is try to find the fastest solution. So I'm going to slide these. I'm selecting and sliding, and that's all I'm doing. And I will show you how we can clean up this even better. Now, while I'm doing this, I want to discuss the concept of what this object is doing. This is a hanging light. This is a decoration in our scene to help dictate a lighting structure in our vampire crypt. In our game mechanic, while we have no real game mechanic, I'm making the assumption that the player will not be able to actually get up and get eye level with the chain link fence. If this was any game that I was playing, I would be trying to do that as a player, which means that if you're going to develop a game that has chains, I want to see a good chain map. What I'm doing now is I'm grabbing edges and I'm using the align tool to just snap all my vertices together. All these pieces were roughly the exact same size, so it makes it pretty easy for me to line them up and feel confident that the proportions will be displayed properly. And I'll get into a little bit of that here shortly because we will definitely see it when I get all this set up. So I'm going to... Okay, we'll fast forward, and we've basically lined all of our chain pieces and cleaned them all up. So I'll go back and show our map. So now that's going to be a lot easier to scale uniformly. So I'm going to put this, just go ahead and do this. It's going to kind of shift, hold control. It's going to move fast because it's such a long it's a long piece, but it also has a very short height. It's very short, so it's going to scale very quickly when you're in this area. So let's take a look at what we got. So that's actually how our chain is actually rendering. I think that's pretty close. What do y'all think? Okay, so let's attack that. Well, there's proof of our opacity map working. It's a little scaled off, but we'll work on that. So we'll go back into material or our editor. Again, we can do the exact same process. This is basically a rectangular box, so all the sides are going to be the exact same size. So what I'm going to do now is I rotate it 90 and I put it into freeform mode. Oopsie. And I'm going to scale this up, and I'm not holding control or shift. I'm doing it manually. That way I can get all the sides put together the way I need them. I'm going to align everything. And I'm sure there are scripts and macros and things you can do to do a lot of this work a lot faster for you. So I'm lining this up. This top rim is just this trim piece that if you remember in the map, it's cut out with the chain. I think this is the bottom. You could make it here. Don't remember exactly how I did it. That's pretty much up to judgment on you guys. So now I'm just going to select this and slide this over. Oopsie. Select one. I'm going to go ahead and click on select by element. So I select it. It selects all the pieces that are welded contiguously. I click on once. I'm going to hold control and click again. It's going to select another version of that face and slide it down. And again, there's a third one. So now we've got all four here. So what I want to do now is get all our pieces lined up on the map properly. being focused and spending a little time on all of the little details here will make a big difference in the long run. All right, so there we have a pretty good alignment going on. And there's our hanging lamp. Now I want to keep my unwrapped data, so I'm going to right click and collapse to. It keeps it bakes the unwrapped data and it keeps my instance active. So now if I go to the rest of my scene and I want to select all my hanging lights, I go to edit, select, why am I not selecting instances? Alright, so we got a light, and what we can do is go to edit, select by instances. It'll select the rest of our objects that have the same, they're all instances of the same. They don't have, notice there's no map on these objects, no material. So I select all the objects that I want to have that material in there, go to material, and just make sure it's selected, which I believe it is, and apply. And now all my lights have the same material. And that is our hanging light tutorial.